Jeremiah, speaking the words of the Lord, says, "What has straw in common with wheat?" You know, you can't be straw and wheat. You're either one or the other. You're straw or you're wheat.
Straw comes from the wheat shaft.
So they have that in common. But other than that, they have very little in common, would you say?
Yes.
Is this the interactive service? I thought that was at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock. Oh, I was mistaken.
Question at 9.
Huh?
You didn't ask that question at 9.
So,
You need duct tape.
you're either wheat or you're straw. Jesus said, father against son, son against father, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, 2 against 3, 3 against 2, division, one or the other, one side or the other. I came to create division, right? And then Paul says, look, what do you do if you don't know who you are? If you don't know if you're one or the other, right? If you don't remember who you are. That's what I want to talk about today. Like, what do you do when you're alone? Have you ever been alone? Like all alone? What do you do? I was reminded of a story, something I learned from my daughter. She's 15 now. Leah, you know her. And we adopted her when she was 3. And we lived in Scotts Bluff, and it was 2 full years before she slept in her own bed or slept in her own room. 2 years. Right? She came to us at 3 years old. And so I'm ashamed to tell you how hard-nosed I was when we first got her. It was embarrassing, really. You're going to sleep in your own room, you know. Daggone it, I don't care, we have to lock the door. You're going to be in here, you're going to learn, doggone it. And, you know, if you know nothing else about Leah, you know that she has a will of her own, and she broke us then. But, so she slept in our bed. For 2 years, she slept in our bed. First at the bottom of our bed, and then in a cot on the end of our bed. And then when we moved to Denver, she liked this idea of having a new room, her own room, and so she started sleeping in her own room, but she wouldn't sleep there all night. One night, Jill was out of town. I don't remember where she was, but it was just Leah and I. Well, Forrest would have been there too, but Leah and I were there. And in the middle of the night, I'm a sound sleeper, but I awoke. She had dragged all of her bedding and her pillow into our room, and she had laid it down on the floor next to where I slept in the bed, and she was whimpering. She was crying. And it woke me up. And it was dark, and I just reached my hand down, and she reached her hand up, and we just held hands. And we held hands like that until she fell asleep again, and that calmed her. And the lesson that I learned that night that I've never forgotten is nobody wants to be alone. Nobody wants to be alone, ever. And nobody has to be alone, ever. Somebody has got us. That's what we want to know. We want to know that somebody in our lives, that we have people, that these are our people, and somebody counts us as their own. Somebody's willing to take us in and hold us tight and envelop us in their love and say to us, I got you. I got you. I get you. You are one of mine. You are one of ours. So if you ever get to that place where you feel like you're all alone, you need to know where to go back to, who your folks are, who your people are, and how to get back to them. And that's what I think is at the heart of today's readings. Right? There's a sense, especially in Paul's letter to the Hebrews, that you need to know who your people are, because without your people, you are alone. And nobody should ever be alone. But sometimes you get separated from your people, right? Kids are going off to college, yeah, and they're away from their people. And sometimes you strike out on your own. Do you remember when you did that for the first time? Anybody remember leaving for the first time? And you don't know who you are. Am I that person I used to be? Am I the person I'm with? The people I'm with? Am I the person I'm becoming? Right? Was there a moment? Were there any moments in your life when you wondered if you did the right thing by leaving? Did you ever want to just cut your losses and go back home, right? And live there? it's kind of like, Paul says it's kind of like running a race. Now, I know we have some runners in the congregation. I'm so proud of Nathan. My friend just ran 6 miles, or 6K. That's a big deal. 6 miles.
6K.
Whatever it was a lot.
6 miles.
I'm proud of you. But it's nothing compared to Peg.
No.
I mean, nothing compared to Peg, who runs up to 50 miles. Am I right? I mean, there are people. Now, here's my question. Anybody here ever run a marathon or a half a marathon? Yeah, right? Have you ever, is there a point in those miles when you're on your way out, right? And you get about halfway or whatever. Is there a point when you think, oh my gosh, this is a mistake? Every time. Oh my word, it's a mistake. I need to turn around and head back, right? This happened to me. I don't run anywhere close to even what you run. I used to run 3 miles a few times a week, and I did it in Scotts Bluff where I lived, and it was at the YMCA. They have a trail. And you know, and you run out so far and you run back. I think the whole thing's about 3 miles, 4 miles, whatever it is. So I was back a couple of weeks ago, and I'm not in quite the same shape I was when I left. I don't run quite as much, and if I do a mile, that's a big deal these days. Well, anyway, so I'm back there, and I think, I wonder if I could run that path again. So I did. I got my shoes on. I was like, I didn't stretch or anything. I just went out there, and I was like, I can do it. I can do it. Okay. I'm halfway out. I'm thinking, oh my God, that was a big mistake. I can't do this, right? I made it. I'm stubborn enough, I guess. But there is a point, I think, when you leave a place to head to a new place. That's what I want to talk about. When you're not one thing and you're not quite another, and you wonder if you've made the right choice or if you've made a big mistake. That's what I want to talk about today. Because Paul writes this letter to a group of Jewish Christ followers to encourage them. They had decided to follow what was known as the way of Christ. This idea that Jesus was not just a talented and heretical rabbi, but in fact was the Messiah of God, long awaited and now received. And they probably didn't mean to get so crossways with their families and their friends, but that's what happened, right? Jesus said it would. He said in our gospel today, he said father against son, mother against daughter, and it happened to these Jewish Christ followers. And now they found themselves in a jam. They were neither fish nor fowl. They were not Jewish enough to be accepted by their families and friends, but too Jewish to turn their backs on this idea of a Messiah that they profess to believe about Jesus. So they said to themselves, who are we? That was the question. Why is this happening? Is it worth it? Because they're getting kicked out of the synagogue, and their people aren't recognizing them anymore, right? Is it worth it? Should we just turn back? And Paul tells them what? Paul says to them, have faith. Paul says, have faith. Remember who you are. Remember your people. And then he goes on to give them a long list of faithful people from their Jewish history. Samson and Jephthah and Gideon and Rahab, all of whom have found themselves in similar positions of despair and abandonment and even torture. All of whom serve the same God, Yahweh, the God of Israel, the God of the Hebrews, who is also the God of the Christ followers, the God of the way. And then Paul writes these amazing words. I was asking the earlier services, does anybody here memorize Scripture anymore? Yeah? Well, if you do and you'd like to find one to memorize, how about this one? This is a great one. Hebrews 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and every sin that clings closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding the shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God. Therefore, Paul says, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, have faith. Remember who you are. Remember who your people are. That is what I want you to think about this morning. I want you to think about who are the people who are witnesses to your faith. Did you have a sainted grandmother? Anybody here have a sainted grandmother who said, come on, you're going to get baptized because I said so, right? You're going to go to church with me. I don't care what your parents say. You're going to church with me, right? Did your family, mom and dad, did they pile you kids in the car every Sunday and did you go together? Did your parents model the Christian life? Were they your cloud of witnesses? Was it a friend? teacher, youth leader, pastor, rabbi, spouse. You know, if you walk down the halls of this parish, you're going to see pictures of the great cloud of witnesses from this parish. Anybody know them? Anybody here remember the names? Bob and Lou Adwords? Anybody? Yeah? Yeah? Joe Schaefer? Demonics? They're not on the wall. Well, they're on the wall. They're not in the columbarium, but they're on the wall. Right? Kathy Lake? Ringing a bell? How about Dell and Pat Morgan? Witnesses, cloud of witnesses, heroes of our faith. How about Deacon Pat? Yeah? Been here, done that, gonna do it again, right? These are your leaders, right? I want you to know today that you are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses who have gone before you and who walk alongside you. People of faith in a community of faith who will be there for you when you need them, who will support you when you are right and correct you when you are wrong and embrace you when you are present, and who will look for you if you should get lost. If you ever wonder if it is worth it, it is. In all likelihood, you will never be sawn in two like poor old Isaiah, but you might very well find your heart broken into pieces. And you may wonder where you fit. Let me tell you something. You fit here. Right? We are the ones who will find you. We are the ones who will embrace you. We are the ones who will say, you're one of ours. We got you. And Jesus Christ, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, has got us all. We are not alone. It is worth it. Have faith.